Picture this. You walk out to your garden on a beautiful morning, coffee in hand, ready to admire your prized tomato plants. And boom, half of your leaves look like they've been twisted by an invisible hand. Your heart sinks. Is this the end of your tomato dreams for the year? Here's what 90% of gardeners do wrong in this moment. They panic and start treating symptoms without understanding what their plant is actually screaming at them. Some of you are probably reaching for that fertilizer right now, aren't you? Stop! Put down that bottle. Welcome back to Almost 2 Acres. I'm Carol, and today I'm going to save your tomato harvest by teaching you the one skill most gardeners never learn, how to actually listen to what your plants are trying to tell you. Because here's the shocking truth. Sometimes those curled leaves aren't a cry for help. They're a sign your plant is being absolutely brilliant. But you need to know the difference, because getting it wrong could cost you your entire crop. Now, before we start panicking, let me share you some good news. Not all leaf curl is bad. In fact, sometimes your tomato plant is just being incredibly smart. See, when your tomato plant experiences stress, maybe it's a scorching hot day, there's a strong wind, or the soil got a little too dry, those leaves will curl upward and inward as a survival mechanism. It's like the plant is putting on a jacket. By reducing the surface area exposed to the elements, it's conserving precious water through transpiration. I call this physiological leaf roll, and it's actually pretty amazing when you think about it. Your plant is literally adapting in real time to protect itself. If your plant is still green, still growing, and still producing fruit, this type of curling is usually nothing to worry about. The plant will often bounce back once conditions improve. But here's the key, and this is where being a plant detective comes in. You need to know the difference between this normal protective curling and the kind that signals real trouble. So how do you tell the difference? It's all about observation. I want you to look at 3 things. First, the direction of the curl. Are the leaves curling upward like they're trying to catch rain? That's often normal stress response, heat, or maybe too much nitrogen. But if leaves are curling downward, that's usually a red flag for overwatering, root problems, or even herbicide damage. Second, which leaves are affected? If it's the older, lower leaves showing symptoms first, you're probably looking at environmental stress or nutrient issues. But if it's the new growth that's twisted and weird looking, that could be pests, viruses, or chemical damage. Third, overall plant health. A vigorous plant that's still producing with some leaf curl, probably fine. A plant that's also yellowing, wilting, or covered in spots, that's when we need to take action. All right, let's talk about the most common culprits behind problematic leaf curl. Number 1, watering issues, and I mean both too much and too little water. Underwatering makes leaves curl upward and feel crispy. The plant is desperately trying to conserve moisture. Overwatering is snakier because it kills the roots, so even though there's water in the soil, the plant can't absorb it. Those leaves curl downward and often turn yellow. But here's what really gets plants stressed: inconsistent watering. You know, when you forget to water for a week, then feel guilty and dump a gallon on them? That roller coaster of wet, dry drives plants crazy and can cause all sorts of issues, including blossom end rot. Temperature extremes are another big one. When it's consistently over 90 degrees, your tomatoes are basically in survival mode. Those upward curling leaves are their way of saying, it's too hot. On the flip side, if nighttime temperatures drop below 54 degrees, you'll see similar curling as the plant tries to protect itself from the cold. Then we have nutrient imbalances. Too much nitrogen creates this weird situation where the plant grows tons of lush foliage, but the roots can't keep up with supplying water to all those leaves. Result? Downward curling and drooping. Not enough phosphorus, potassium, or magnesium can also cause curling, usually starting with the older leaves. Now let's talk about pests, those tiny troublemakers that can cause big problems. Aphids are probably the most common. These little green, yellow, or gray bugs cluster on new growth and suck the life out of your plants. Literally. They're like plant vampires, and they leave behind a sticky honeydew that attracts ants and causes sooty mold. Spider mites love hot, dry conditions. You'll see leaves that look bleached or bronzed, and if you look really closely, I mean get your face right up to the plant, you might see tiny webs on the underside of leaves. Broad mites are particularly nasty because they inject toxins as they feed, causing severe twisting and distortion of new growth. The damage can look so weird that people sometimes think it's herbicide damage. The key with pest identification is getting up close and personal with your plants. Check those undersides of leaves regularly. That's where these little guys like to hang out. Now for the more serious threats, diseases and chemical exposure. Viral diseases like tomato yellow leaf curl virus are probably the worst case scenario. These cause severe downward curling, yellowing, stunted growth, and often mean the end of that plant. The really frustrating thing about the viruses is that there's no cure. If you confirm a viral infection, you need to remove the entire plant, roots and all, and destroy it. Don't compost it because viruses can survive that. Herbicide damage is something people don't always think about, but it's more common than you'd expect. Even tiny amounts of weed killer drift from neighboring properties can cause downward curling and twisted, malformed fruit. And here's a sneaky one. Contaminated compost or mulch from fields that were sprayed with persistent herbicides can cause problems for months or even years. Okay, so now that we've identified the problems, let's talk solutions and prevention, because prevention is always easier than treatment. For watering issues, consistency is key. Tomatoes need about an inch of water per week, delivered deeply and preferably at soil level. I'm a huge fan of drip irrigation or soaker hoses because they deliver water slowly and consistently. Mulch is your best friend here. It helps retain moisture and prevents those wild swings in soil moisture that stress plants out. For temperature stress, shade cloth can be a game changer during heat waves. A 30 to 40% shade cloth can drop temperatures by 10 to 15 degrees. For container plants, you can move them to get afternoon shade during the hottest part of the summer. For nutrient issues, get a soil test. I can't stress this enough. Guessing at fertilizer needs often makes problems worse. A simple soil test will tell you exactly what your soil needs, and then you can fertilize appropriately. For pests, regular inspection is crucial. Catch problems early, and often a strong stream of water from the hose will knock off aphids and spider mites. For heavier infestations, insecticidal soap or neem oil work really well. I also like to encourage beneficial insects by planting flowers nearby. They're nature's pest control team. For disease prevention, it's all about good cultural practices. I am so bad at this one. Proper spacing for air circulation, avoiding overhead watering, removing lower leaves to prevent soil splash, and crop rotation are all essential. Here's the bottom line. Curling tomato leaves are your plant's way of communicating with you. Sometimes they're saying, "I'm stressed, but I'm handling it," and sometimes they're screaming, "Help me!" The key is learning to listen. Remember, healthy plants start with good fundamentals: consistent watering, balanced nutrition, proper spacing, and regular observation. When problems do arise, take a systematic approach to diagnosis before jumping to solutions. If this video helped you become a better plant detective, hit that like button, subscribe for more gardening tips, and ring the notification bell. If you like my coffee drinking hippie vibe, please subscribe and bring along your friends. Until next time, let's keep growing.